Idaho and America. This is Idaho's most popular political podcast, The Freedom Bros. I am the lone Freedom Bro, singular. Tonight, Greg Pruitt is out doing what Greg Pruitt does. He is promoting guns on his gun rallies tour. I think he's up in North Idaho tonight, which is actually a great place to be, especially in the autumn. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful up there in the fall. I guess we're not technically in fall yet, but you get my point. I think he's up in Sandpoint, if I'm not mistaken. Great place to be. Oh man, I'm jealous. I mean, Boise's great and all, but North Idaho is spectacularly beautiful. We have an amazing show for you tonight. Lucas Cayler is running for the Idaho House against perhaps the worst opponent in the history of all opponents, Sarah Cheney. But who is Lucas? We know who Sarah Cheney is, and she's invited to come on the show, by the way. We'll get back to that in just a second. Who is Lucas? What does he stand for? Is he for liberty? Is he a faker? We're going to find out, because that's what Idaho Freedom Bros is all about. We want to make sure that you are informed when you go to the polls in May 2024 to make your choice. And we've got a lot to talk about. So I'm going to roll a stinger. I'm going to tell you about a couple things that have developed, and then we're going to talk to Lucas. But right now, it's our over-the-top stinger. This is episode 18 of Freedom Bros with Lucas Cayler. You know, we live in strange days. It's strange, the news cycle that we're in. Think about what happened this week. The U.S. Air Force, I think it was the Marines. The Marines lost an $80 million airplane. An $80 million airplane went missing. And that's not even the biggest news item of the week. That's America is weird. The writers of this season of America have got, I don't even know. John Fetterman cannot even bother to dress himself to go to work. So we have to change the rules of the U.S. Senate. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants, am I allowed to say that term? I don't know. I'm going to say it. Are flooding across our southern border. Joe Biden is buying more masks, more COVID tests, more vaccines for the flu. And they don't work. You might die from the vaccine. And they lost a freaking $80 million airplane. It may still be flying over you. Like, literally, you should step outside of your house right now and look. Okay, it's just so weird. Life is weird right now. There's so much to talk about, guys. Before we get to Lucas, I'm excited. Lucas is a great guy. I've talked to him a little bit beforehand. I'm excited to dig in and get to know him and see who he is and share that information with you. Before we do that, though, I'm going to tease out something. If you live in District 10, Middleton area, Star area, North Nampa, if you live in District 13, which is a slice of Nampa, you received a text message this afternoon from a group called Idaho Liberty. Idaho Liberty. And they support liberty, right? Because they say it in their name. No, they don't. They sent out text messages attacking people like Brian Lenny and Tammy Nichols because they support the Constitution, because they support traditional values. We're going to get into that and more. We'll get into that. I'll play you the ad that this fake group that nobody knows who it is. No one knows who is behind these text messages, which is an FCC violation, by the way. And there may be some serious fines coming for whoever sent these text messages. We're going to find out. We're going to try for that. But the ad they put out is so bad, and I can't wait to share with you. But first, forest. Representative Chris Allgood is not, in fact, all good. And I've been waiting to say that all week. And he has decided not to run for re-election in Caldwell. He's a city councilor. He's got other things to do. I don't know if he wants to just fade into retirement or if he just liked being on the city council more than being in the legislature. I can't say I disagree. Being in the legislature would suck. Lucas Cayler is running to replace him. Let's bring him on. Lucas, welcome to Freedom Bros. How are you tonight?
Hey, good evening, Dustin. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I am good. So, let me get right down to it. Who the hell are you? You're running to replace Chris in the Idaho House. You want a seat, you want to vote, you want to govern, you want to be on committees, you want to talk about legislation. Who are you? What's your background, and why do you deserve to be there?
Well, for starters, again, my name is Lucas Cayler. I am a native Idahoan. I was homeschooled K through 12 by my parents. And after high school graduation, I joined the Navy, and then I spent the next 10 years in the Navy. And after I got out of the Navy, which would have been May of 2009, I went to work as a civilian contractor for the Army, working through the company BAE Systems. And I worked that job for 3 years. And then that was kind of back during the time when Obama was making a lot of defense cuts. And after the third round of layoffs at that job, which was out in Hawaii, I moved back to Idaho to reconnect with all my friends and family back here. So that's the little brief bio about me. And then why I'm running for office, to be honest, am very tired of watching our representatives and our other elected officials make all of these empty promises on the campaign trail. They say they're going to fight for liberty, they're going to fight for freedom, they're going to pass tax reform, budget cuts, so on and so forth. And then they get to the State House or they get to their other positions of office, and it seems like they completely disregard and forget about the electorate who put them there. And I've looked at a lot of the people who make up the governing body of not only the Idaho government, but the governing body as a whole across America. And they're people who are wealthy elites. They're bankers, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're other people. And please let me clarify, I have nothing against any of the above in those professions, but those people do not represent the vast majority of the working class in America. And I happen to be a working class man. I happen to feel the same struggles from inflation on gas and food and real estate and everything else that the middle class family here in Idaho is suffering from. And I think it's time to have good, conservative, godly, and moral leadership ascend to the State House and to start to reverse a lot of the establishmentarian ways of doing business that have just taken over and become a normal part of Idaho politics over the last decades.
So let's before we dig into the politics, I realized that you were a military veteran. Like, first of all, thank you for your service. Can you tell me how the hell the military loses an $80 million plane? And do you know where it is? I would really like the prize money. Do you know where it is? No.
No, I don't know where it is, but the aircraft or the pieces of the aircraft have been located as of a news update about 48 hours ago.
Oh, I guess I'm behind on the news. So it did crash. Okay. Thank you for how you lose an airplane. I don't even know. Okay. I love what you say in your intro because it's the same thing that I feel, which is so many Idaho Republicans, and I don't even care about the Democrats because at least I think they're honest about who they are. So many Idaho Republicans are frustrating as hell because they say, and they use that phrase. And if you use it in your campaign, I'm going to make fun of you. I'm a common sense conservative, as that's their mark. That's their tag, which means I spend like a liberal after I get your vote and after, you just forget that there's an election. That's a great thing. My question for you, though, what are your top policy priorities? What's that fire in your belly? What's bringing you to run? Because this is not easy. I know that this is a gauntlet. This is a daunting challenge for you, and you've got to have some fire in the belly. What's the policy stuff that you want to change when you get to Boise?
That list is long and distinguished. But let's start with the basics. First and foremost, I know this is so cliched. Everybody talks about taxes, right? Everybody talks about budget cuts. But if we look at the tax situation here in the state of Idaho and the budget, for example, the budget, it is increased for fiscal year 2023 by approximately 40% over what it was in 2022. And I'm not a mathematician, but just some basic math skills should allow anybody to deduce that type of budget growth over the next couple of years is going to put Idaho into a place of bankruptcy, and the rest of the citizens shall follow suit. And so, talking about taxes, I know we did get a little bit of property tax help, property tax help during this last legislative session. It supposedly saved the Idaho taxpayers about $251 million. And then if you look at the education increase, and this was all laid out in the governor's 2023 budget highlight.
Right.
The budget for the education increased by $300 million. And so again, not a mathematician, but if we saved $251 million over in property tax relief, but we added $300 million, did we really get any tax savings?
Right. So that's an interesting point, and I that's the frustrating thing about working in policy in Idaho is that, and Fred Birnbaum over at the Idaho Freedom Foundation does a really good job. He understands the budget more than a lot of the budget writers do. So if you're not paying attention to Fred's work, just overall, pay attention. He gets right to the point in his writing. It's really good stuff. But it's really frustrating because all we hear all day in the media is that the Republicans are starving schools. The Republicans are starving schools. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're absolutely not. They're dumping bags of money. And just because every teacher is not rolling around in a freaking Rolls Royce and eating caviar for lunch doesn't mean that we're not putting money into schools. And not only are we putting money into schools, which, again, there's going to be no payoff because kids are going to continue to fail and continue to fail and continue to fail. But we're also putting money into Medicaid for kids. Okay, maybe I can get behind that. But also for able-bodied adults to have free health care that you and I pay for as a middle-class resident, right? You're paying for that. And as somebody who was in the military, it's like, you knew how to get your free health care. You went and joined the freaking military, right? I mean, where are you at on Medicaid and Medicaid expansion? Would you be willing to repeal expansion and maybe look at other cuts to that program?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, the two most expensive industries in the United States, healthcare and education. And incidentally, or maybe coincidentally, I'm not sure how you want to look at that, the government has their fingers in both of those pots.
Yep.
And as we all know, when government gets involved, government only takes money from the taxpayers and dumps it into programs that further drive up the industry in those particular areas. And if they left it up to the principles of free market, I think it would be much more self-regulating, just like every other free market industry is. And so anyway, to get back to your question, yes, I think that the expansion of both of those things is completely unnecessary. And I would do my best to work with other Freedom Caucus members in the House to eliminate some of that expansion and roll it back to levels from previous years.
Let me ask you this. I want to get back to education for just a second. We'll get back to Medicaid. We're just going to jump around a little bit because my ADHD is really bad tonight. You were homeschooled for at least part of your educational career, if you will.
All 12 years.
All 12 years. Okay. Again, ADHD. Sorry about that. Are you in favor of school choice? Because I got not into it, but Brandon Shippey, who's running over in District 9, great candidate over there. I'm so excited.
I watched that podcast this morning.
Okay, good. So you're doing your homework. Cool. That's great. Thank you for that. He and I kind of disagreed on this where, look, I understand that when government gets involved with stuff, it's never great, but getting kids out of government schools is a net positive. And allowing for vouchers, if that's the poll tested scare term you want to use, or just ESAs for money to follow the kid, like I'm all for that. Is it the best solution? No, but we can't. The best solution for me is burning down the entire government school system and starting over. What's your answer on education and the future of education here in Idaho so that we can actually teach our kids to read, write, and do math at grade level?
So first and foremost, to answer your question to the specifics of the ESA or the Education Savings Account, when that was first being discussed here back during the House session early this year, it on face value sounds like a great thing. And overall, I think that it has its place. I think that parents should have the choice to school their children in the manner that they see fit, that aligns best with their beliefs and their values. Ultimately, I don't have any kids, so it kind of irritates me that my tax dollars go to fund the public education of everybody else, but that money doesn't go to parents who have values and ideologies that are more closely aligned with mine. Now, having said that, I think that kind of like you alluded to, when the government gets involved, there's usually strings attached. And I have heard the arguments from both sides on this particular issue. And I believe that it's Tennessee who's currently working or trying to work through that issue right now. They passed an ESA bill. I believe it was this year, possibly last. Don't hold me to the exact time frame on that, but I guess the government is now taking a look at that, and they're wanting to start implementing testing requirements for those children that are participating in those education savings accounts. And I guess basically they're trying to figure out what the return on their investment is. And from the standpoint of being a parent who home educates their children and talking to other parents who are living that currently, they don't like the strings attached with the government. But overall, I think that the education savings account does have its place. I think it extends more opportunities financially to parents who don't want to have their kids educated in the Marxist halls of public academia.
Let me ask you this: you don't have kids.
That's correct.
Do you think schools are as bad as conservatives say they are?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me back up here a second. So everybody remembers the big Caldwell School Board blow up back in the wintertime, where Policy 3281 was on the agenda to be discussed. And Senator Chris Trakel, who lives just about 4 blocks from me, him and Nicole are both great friends of mine. He was down there and he got the school board meeting shut down because he started calling the school board trustees out on their flagrant violations of open meeting laws and whatever.
Right.
But so that was kind of the intro for me. I've never really gotten too deep into the public education sphere, but since that night, I have tried to get down to the school board meetings in Caldwell at least once a month and review some of the policies. I've gotten up and talked about my own hesitations or some of my objections that I have to some of the policies that they've tried to bring forward. And one of the ones that more recently I talked or gave an opinion on was several policies to be exact, where they're going through and revising standing policy to eliminate he, her, she, him pronouns with gender neutral pronouns for no other reason than, well, as the superintendent told me, well, that's just what we do now. Everybody does that. We're not trying to eliminate the male female gender. That's just the direction that everybody's going.
Wait,
and
should I have started off the podcast asking you your pronouns? Should I have done that? Maybe not. I don't know.
No pronouns.
That's just what we do around here. That's just what we do. I'm just teasing. But I'm curious. I have theories, and I don't know why. Like, there's no evidence of that there's this vast left-wing conspiracy. But why do you think government schools suck? Like, what is going on? That I feel like they've always been kind of less than mediocre.
Well, first and foremost, I think when you take God out of schools, you take God, probably the first issue that I would cite. The second issue is, and I think there's been plenty of documented examples of this, with critical race theory that is being rolled out in multiple education platforms, specifically in the blue states, but not exclusive to the blue states. It is also making its way into the conservative states, critical race theory, and then the LGBTQ agenda has definitely made its way into our education systems as a whole. And I will. I'll cite an incident that happened just here a couple weeks ago at Caldwell School Board. One of the teachers was putting up gay pride flags in her classroom, and she got called on it. As I recall, there was a couple of students that raised an issue with that, and that teacher was, or that issue was addressed with that teacher from the school board, because several parents decided to take issue with it and called down to the school and asked, why is this happening? But I also think that people have forgotten what the purpose of school is. We're supposed to be educated. Education is power. It's also knowledge. Knowledge and education equal power. If we dumb down our society and we don't educate them about the things that really matter, like how to do math, what good economic principles and values are, what civics is, to learn about the history as it actually happened in our country, and not the history as it's taught by people like Ibram X. Kendi and the other race-baiting people that are, how do we want to say it? They're front and center.
They're grifting. That's what they're doing. They're grifting
yes,
off their fake hate, their fake narrative, and it's all BS. It's interesting to me. I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't know if there's been something. I think a lot of it stems from university life. I've worked with it's a different industry, but I've worked with a number of reporters, and the reporters who go through J school, through journalism school, are always way more woke than those who kind of just interned into the practice. And I'm wondering if teaching is the same thing. Like, I'm wondering if there's something going on in our education schools, in universities, that say, okay, you can do all of this, but it is your job to be a force for social good. And they define social good as transformative for the left. I think that's what's going on, honestly. And I think the pride has become, and you could see it with the flag, and they have their own worship practices, their own music, it really is. I think pride has become a religion for them. And I say that because somebody did this on Twitter the other day. Imagine if teachers were in schools baptizing kids and not telling parents, or reading scriptures and not telling parents, and converting kids to Christianity. You can bet parents would lose their freaking minds.
But there would be lawsuits, there would be protests, it would be headline news on every single left-wing rag across the entire country.
Exactly. And now what they are doing, and what they say that they're not, is they're converting kids to their religion, the secular, humanist, hedonistic religion of pride. And if you don't go along, then you're shamed. If you don't give us your pronouns, you're shamed. You're different. There's a lot of peer pressure. I digress. But let's get back. I'm sorry. That's just so frustrating, and it's such a big waste of our resource. We're spending, we get crap all the time because we only spend like $10,000 or $15,000 a kid on education. But if that's the education we're getting, I don't know that I want to spend a dime on education, because they're all coming out little woke soldiers. I don't know. Okay, let's get back to tax policy for a second. You mentioned, we're getting some tax relief this year. That's great. Cool. But there's additional spending. Taxes are higher than they need to be. If you could be on the tax committee, which is an assignment you could have, what would you do with Idaho's tax code? Is he still there? Did he freeze up? Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Let me see if I can get him back. Hang on. You back with me, buddy?
Yeah, it looks like I dropped the connect on my end.
That or the CIA did not like that we were talking about woke schools. It's one or the other.
Quite possible.
So let me restate the question. You could have an assignment to sit on one of Idaho's tax committees, whether in the House or eventually, I guess it'd be the House. What would you do with Idaho tax code right now if you could wave a magic wand?
Well, first and foremost, property tax needs to go away. Now, I don't know exactly how that works in the grand scheme of things. As we all know, and we're not talking about any new material here, but the tax on a home, even after it's paid off, is a mortgage note that's tied to the government for the rest of the homeowner's life. Right. And the people who suffer the most from that are people on fixed income, elderly, retirees. And so again, I don't know exactly what it looks like to repeal the property tax completely. There's a couple of different ideas that I have heard that I think would absolutely work. Replace it with a consumption tax. Replace it with a one-time tax on the home, the sale of the home. Statistically, every 7 years, every home in Idaho is bought and sold. And if we were to add that tax on the sale of the home, that might make up for the shortfall, or possibly, add it to a consumption tax, like sales tax, for example. But yeah, property tax needs to go away, specifically considering the rising, almost by quantum leaps, the rising value of property here in this state. We've already pushed everybody else, young first-time home buyers, out of the market. And with a looming recession, there's going to be people that are losing their jobs, people that are going to end up losing their homes because they can't afford the high prices of their mortgages, the interest rates, and then the property tax. So property tax is a huge one that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that one has always bothered me, because you're right. Once your home is paid off, once you're all good, you've achieved the American dream, you've burned the note with your wife, and you've got the white picket fence, you could still lose it all, because the government wants its take, always wants its cut of what you have. I think there are taxes that are completely immoral, and that's number one. Number two, in my mind, is the income tax, because as you make more, you are taxed more. So we're penalizing people for success. Like if it were me, if I can't get rid of them, which I would get rid of one of the two of those, I would at least find a way to reduce taxes on overtime pay, so that the people who are busting their butts, that the nurses and the construction workers who are working like 80 hours a week, they actually get rewarded. There were times when, and I don't know the math on this, but I don't know if you've ever done the overtime work thing, but like you get your check and you're expecting this like massive payment because you've done a bunch of overtime, and it feels like it's actually taxed more. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's what it feels like. So two very, very bad taxes. Let's talk about, because I would be in so much trouble if I didn't ask you about guns. Do you own guns? I shouldn't ask that. I'm not going to ask that. But where are you at on
Ask
guns?
away.
Where are you at on guns? What's your favorite gun? And would you ever, and I mean ever, support red flag gun laws here in Idaho?
Okay, so let's go down the list of questions here. So yes, I am a gun owner. The exact number of guns that I have, I won't talk about that over the podcast here. But I spent, like I said, 10 years in the Navy, and I got to shoot quite a few different firearms. And I think probably my two favorite firearms, which of course these aren't available to the average civilian, the old M60 machine gun. I got to play with that one a little bit, as well as the Browning M2 automatic 50 cal. And awesome. Then to answer your question about red flag gun laws, no, I think red flag laws, however much sense they may seem to make up front on, oh, well, we got to, preemptively stop crime, minority report kind of antics. The reality is that red flag gun laws are completely unconstitutional. We have due process in this state where people should, if they end up committing a crime, then they're charged with and then punished for the crime after the fact. They should not be punished up front by having their firearms removed. And the part that really scares me is once firearms are confiscated because of a red flag, how long does it take for that person to get their gun rights and their actual guns restored to them? What kind of headache, what kind of red tape, how many thousands of dollars in attorney fees do they have to spend? So no, to answer your question, I would never, ever support any type of gun restriction, red flag law. Anything that has to do with removing the Second Amendment from the citizens of Idaho is a hard pass for me.
What if there's a shooting in the Caldwell School District and kids in your district, I'm sorry to ask this question, but this is the reality that we live in. Your district, gun violence, which is a problem, by the way. I think we can all admit that gun violence is a problem. But there's a shooting in the Caldwell School District, and your residents, in their rush to look for hope, to look for something to make sense of the evil that has just been perpetrated in their community, they're calling for you to give in on red flag gun laws or lose election. What do you do?
Well, first and foremost, let's start with the basics. I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so anybody that asks me to break my oath to defend the Constitution, which would mean giving into the growing, screaming, frothing mob to do something, to enact gun control, to try to restore peace to the city, to the neighborhood through means of gun reform, gun legislation. I'm sorry, I can't do that. That's not going to happen. If you don't like how I vote as a lawmaker in your district, then vote me out next election. But again, sorry, I am a firm believer that guns as a whole, when owned by the citizen, make society a much safer place. And yes, there are going to be the occasional gun-related incident and crime out there, as unfortunate as that is. The bigger fact remains that more Americans die every day in America from heart disease, which is directly related to the state of your diet and your lifestyle than anything else in America. So,
yep.
If we want to save lives, let's start looking at diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're blessed here in Idaho to have such a good gun culture.
Agreed.
And I think a lot of people in their rush to make sense of violence have started to blame the guns themselves. But at the end of the day, they're just tools. They're just tools in the hands of evil people, just like David and Goliath, and well, that's not a great
Cain
example,
and Abel.
Yeah, there we go. That's a much better example than the one I came up with. But I need to get up on my Bible reading. So let's talk for a second the trans agenda is a huge thing. Going back to the pride, the religion that it is. Idaho passed a law, thankfully, that bans transgender surgeries for youth. Do you think that was an
Yes.
appropriate thing to do, or was that an encroachment on personal liberty?
No, there's no personal liberty that's being encroached upon by that. First and foremost, a person under the age of 18 is not capable of consent. The same reason that we don't allow minors, people under 18, um, to do things like purchase cigarettes, alcohol, to vote. There's a host of other things that are somewhat age sensitive, and it all happens to pertain to the fact that children, minors, even teenagers, grown more mature teenagers, they cannot consent to certain things because they don't understand the full scope of what it is that they're thinking about doing.
Right.
And so I absolutely think that that bill was a win for Idaho. I think that parents, while they should have the freedom to raise their children according to their ideologies and beliefs, that's great. This is America. We have rights to do that. That parents' rights stop when it involves the permanent damage and mutilation of another person's body, in this case, their child. And regardless of what many on the left try to say with regard to this subject, puberty blockers, hormone blockers, they turn those people into medical patients for the rest of their lives.
Bingo. What about it? Before we get to the next question, it's ironic to me that not only do we not let young kids drink, smoke, do drugs, own guns, but just about half a decade, maybe 7 years ago, Idaho passed a law, and there was a huge push from the left. It was all about health and safety. It said, if you are under 14, you can't use a tanning bed. You can't even with parental permission, you can't own or you can't be in a tanning bed if you're under 14. You can if you have parental permission, 14 to 18. Yet, if for a brief period of time, a boy feels like a girl or vice versa, it's okay to make irreversible changes to that person's body. And listen, I'm very, very libertarian about this. I'm a registered libertarian. Those who view the show know that I'm not quiet about it. I wish some of you wish I would be. So once you're 18 and I don't have to pay for it, cut off whatever body parts you want to cut off. It's your body. You will suffer. But when it comes to kids, and this is a uniting issue, I think this is an issue that unites the left and right. A lot of the left and right.
Yes.
My question for you, I remember back in the day, Rob Portman, the senator from Ohio, was one of the first Republican senators to flip on gay marriage because his son came out as gay. And I sense there's something similar going on here in Idaho, and I'm not going to name names, and I'll tell you why later offline. But there are Republicans who their kids are going trans. And they are starting to either take the centrist line of oh, we need to just trust parents, or oh, no, we need to let kids cut off their private parts. Let me ask you, you don't have kids, but let's say a niece or a nephew that you are very close to comes out as trans. Does that change your opinion on this public policy matter?
Not one bit.
So you're not
children
the fun
deserve
uncle?
To be protected.
Okay, that's a great answer. I mean, that's pretty cut and dry, and that's where I'm with you 100%. Let's talk about your governing title for a minute, because not only and you've seen this question if you've watched the podcast. This is a very important question for me. In front of the cameras, the legislature, the leadership, they're all a bunch of statesmen. They preach civility. Let's be civil about this. Let's have thoughtful conversations in front of the cameras. Okay, Kelly Anthony. But behind the cameras, they're a bunch of bullies, right? They are absolute bullies. How do you stand up? How do you work with people like that who demand your obedience for your career in politics to advance, for you to get good assignments, for you to get your bill through? How do you plan on dealing with that?
Well, first and foremost, one of the things that I learned early on after I joined the military is there are all kinds of good and bad people that exist within the confines of the military institution. And you are not given the choice to quit, to run away, to not interact with people. You have to work as a team. So, having said that, one of the things I'm really good at is I can work with and for virtually anyone. However, I have a certain set of principles, not only because I am a man of God, I'm a born again Christian. I firmly believe that there are absolute right things and wrong things. And just speaking from the heart here, okay, I have never been a person who has been motivated by money, power, fame, or titles. I could care less about all four of those things. And if I have to, let's say, for example, to kind of piggyback on what you're talking about, if I have to give a little bit over here, make some concessions to this group over here on a very bad bill to get some support for a good bill that I'm trying to get pushed through, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to budge and sacrifice my own principles and my own morals to advance my cause at the expense of furthering a very bad piece of legislation over here. And if I don't make any friends because of it, or I lose friends because of it, that's fine. One of the people that I really admire who's sitting in the Senate, and again, I'm talking about Chris Trachel. He's a guy who is very principled. He is very absolute on what's right and what's wrong. And I admire that kind of stance, that a person can be a part of an institution like the state government or even the U.S. government. We have a few people that are in our U.S. House and in our U.S. Senate that are very stand-up, godly people. And that takes a lot of moral courage. But, God lives inside me. And at the end of the day, I have to answer to him for the good decisions I make as well as the bad.
That actually leads very, very well into my next question. I like Chris Trachel a lot too. I have some issues with some of his votes. I think he's well-intentioned. I think he is principled. He was in the Freedom Caucus and then left.
That's correct.
Which is not great in my mind, because, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening with him, but what I have seen in my career of dealing with Idaho politicians is, especially the Senate. I don't know what it is in the water over there, but lawmakers will, the Marv Hagedorns and the Bob Noninis and the Stephen Thanes of the world, they serve in the House. They're very conservative in the House. Then they go over to the Senate and they start to, their Freedom Index scores, that's my measuring metric or my measuring stick here, they drop. And I hope that's not what's happening with Chris. But my question for you is, you mentioned the Freedom Caucus twice so far. Are you going to join the Freedom Caucus? And besides Trachel, who else do you want to pattern your career after if you're elected?
So overall, I like the Freedom Caucus. I really do. I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years perusing the IFF Foundation, for example, and I like the way that it scores and it keeps track of legislators, their performance over their terms that they're elected. I also like how it keeps track of the bills and so forth. With regards to the Freedom Caucus, I would say that that's a very good bet that I would end up joining them, because those are the people that I would find myself most ideologically and morally aligned with. And I got to be honest with you, there's a couple of powerhouses that sit in our state house right now. Senator Tammy Nichols, I know her well. I've admired her for a very long time. She has maintained a very conservative stance and stuck up for her constituents, as well as maintained a very conservative voting record. And then Heather Scott's another one that I really have admired for a long time. She's another little powerhouse up there in northern Idaho. And that's the kind of legislator that I aim to be, as somebody who, okay, let me back up here for a second. So when there's a bad piece of legislation that's going to be voted on, and I happen to know that my two current legislators in District 11 they could vote one way or the other on that, and I kind of find that disturbing. So I take it upon myself to reach out to them, emails and phone calls, and say, hey, this is bad legislation. Please vote no against this, or please vote for this bill. With people like Chris Trakel, I know that at the end of the day, I don't have to call him or email him, because his values reflect mine overall. And I know that he's going to vote. There's a 90% chance that he's going to vote the way that I would vote. And I want to be able to pass that type of image and record down to my constituents, the conservatives here in District 11 in Caldwell, that they know that if there's bad legislation coming up, they do not have to worry that I'm going to get squishy on them and vote just to go along to get along, or that there's good freedom legislation that needs to be voted on, that legislation will have my yes vote.
We got a couple minutes left. I want to go quick fire through a few of these. This is my favorite question. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but I want to pick at it just a little bit more. There's a lot of horse trading that goes on in the Capitol. And I would say that a lot of it is unnecessary, because you have Republicans who are in absolute power. And I'm not saying that they should completely ignore the Democrats, because those people deserve representation too. But their ideas are terrible. That's why they don't win elections. I don't know how to make that more clear to people on Twitter that I get into it with, but that's another discussion for another day. But are you willing to horse trade your vote to get something through? Let's say you have a bill that you're really passionate about. It is your baby. It's a really good liberty policy. But Mike Moyle storms into your office, as he does, and he says, Representative Cayler, you're going to get your bill through. We're going to get the votes for it today. But to do that, you have to vote on this piece of crap bill, because I need the votes for this. And if you don't, well, bye-bye to your bill. Is that a scenario that you would entertain?
Of course, it would have to be bill specific. I would have to know what this piece of crap bill is that he's trying to get votes on. But again, going back to the foundation here, is it promote liberty and freedom in Idaho? Then I'm going to vote for it. If it goes against liberty and freedom, if it raises taxes without lowering taxes somewhere else, if it is something that pushes an increase in the education budget, I'm not going to vote for anything like that. And again, if it means sacrificing my bill so my bill doesn't get through, I'm not going to be bought. I'm not going to be pushed or coerced into doing something just to advance my own agenda.
Where are you at on ranked choice voting, or as I like to call it, rigged choice voting? Where are you at on that?
100% against it.
Good. Very good. Convention of States, and the idea that we can have another constitutional convention to rebuild our constitution to save the country. Where are you at on that?
Well, it all sounds good in theory, like many things do. Rick Santorum, in a meeting here back in the late winter, he came to Boise. He was talking about it, and his selling point was, well, we can pass amendments and rein in the federal government. I'm sorry, we already have laws, many, many, many laws that are designed to rein in the federal government, and currently none of that's working. So we either uphold the existing laws that we have or we don't. The Convention of States is a no-go for me. I would never support that.
I don't know if you know him, but Rob Oates is the airport manager out there. He's a libertarian guy, which is weird because libertarians, it's like Ron Swanson, right? He's a libertarian working for the government, but whatever. He and I were having lunch off Chinden. There's a little diner off Chinden out there. And we were talking about the Constitution. And this was like when I was still like a mushy-headed neocon coming right out of college. Because, I mean, and here's the thing, like, coming out of college as a neocon is not the worst thing in the world, because I could have been like a Marxist or a progressive, whatever. But he set me up. He's like, so you believe in the Constitution, Dustin? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Everybody does. He's like, well, that's not true. And he said, what's the point of the Constitution, Dustin? I said, well, it's to limit government, to promote freedom, blah, blah, all the standard answers. He's like, so it's to limit government, right? I said, yeah. He's like, why hasn't it? It's because people like to just do whatever they want to do. And you're exactly right. No convention of states, nothing that you could write in the Constitution would ever save this country. It's all about elections and putting the right people in office. Because if you continue to put people like Mitch McConnell in and all the leftists, I mean, John Fetterman, all those guys, they're going to ignore it. They're going to find their legal weasels to get around all the provisions that you put in, and it doesn't matter. So it opens you up to harm. I think that's it. So you've done us a huge favor. First of all, thank you for coming on. You've done a huge favor for us, and I want to do a huge favor for you. But before we do that, I need to put in this disclaimer. Sarah, I know you're watching this, buddy. I know you hate me, and you hate the libertarian-ish folks. You've got your little liars group, and that's cute and all. You have an open invitation to come on to this show at any time between now and the primary to talk about your platform, to talk about what Lucas said, to tell us why you're the better candidate. I don't think you will, but you can come. Now, with that out of the way for the attorneys in the room and who are watching, Lucas, you've done us a huge favor tonight. Tell us how people can support you, where they can learn about you, where they can donate. Anything else you want to tell people that you want them to know about you and your candidacy?
Thank you, Dustin. So one of the sayings that I have always kept near and dear to my heart by Sir Edmund Burke, everybody probably knows this one, is that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph in the world is for good men to do nothing. And that is why I have decided to run for state representative of District 11. I'm running for seat B. And good men need to stand up in society, good women too, and we do have both of each. We need to stand up and we need to take control of our government, because liberty and freedom is on the line. We're losing our liberties more and more every single day. The blue states have fallen. They're coming after the red states. Idaho is a red state. If the red states fall, America falls. And if America falls, there goes the rest of the world. So that's why I am running for office, because I care about preserving freedom and liberty here in the United States of America and Idaho. More importantly, I probably got that out of order, Idaho, but America as a whole. Anyway, you can support me. Go to my website. It is Cayler for Idaho. That's spelled CAYLERFORIDAHO, CaylerForIdaho.com. You can read about my bio, read a little bit about me, my background. You can also read about the big issues that I am very passionate about. And there is a donate button. I appreciate all donations. Every little bit helps. I think that, and I'm not trying to talk anything bad about Mrs. Cheney.
I'll do that. You keep your nose clean. I'll do that.
I remember Greg Cheney when he was my former legislator, and he did not have a great voting record. And the longer he was in office, the more liberal and progressive his voting record became. And I can't believe for a second that his wife is going to be any more morally or ideologically different than he is. So if you want a conservative candidate that's going to fight to preserve the freedoms here in District 11, in Caldwell, and in Idaho, please vote Lucas Cayler, May 21st, 2024.
Lucas, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate the time.
Hey, good luck in the campaign.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
You too. Whew. That's going to be a fun race. That is going to be a fun race, because if you're watching this and you don't know, Sarah Cheney is one of the nastiest people in the entire political sphere. And that's like, I'm saying that because I'm pretty nasty too. Like, if you look at my Twitter, like, whatever. she has a group called Libertarians Imitating as Republicans, which is weird because it should have been Libertarians Imitating Actual Republicans. And it's a stab at people like me and John Haida and Ryan Spoon, suggesting that we're these pro-weed, pro-abortion libertarians who just want to turn Idaho into Libertopia. It's not. It's the farthest thing from the truth. There's going to be. I feel bad for Lucas because he seems like a really good dude. He's going to be called every name in the book. He's still backstage, so I can see him, and it's kind of fun because it's true. He's going to be called every single name in the book. He's going to be called a racist, a right-wing extremist, a zealot, a Christian nationalist, because that's who Sarah Cheney is. And by the way, I really meant what I said, right? Sarah, you have an open invitation to come on this show and explain who you are and tell my audience, and Greg's audience too, I'm not being selfish here, why you're the best candidate. I don't think you will, but I would love it if you did. You take shots at me and my buddies on Twitter all the time. All the time. And here I am offering you a chance to promote your candidacy and to tell us why your ideas make Idaho freer and better. I hope you'll reach out. You won't, but I hope you do. My prayers are with the people like Lucas. And we've got a good army of candidates that are coming forward in the May 2024 primary. If you haven't noticed, we've got a good Rob Beiswinger is fantastic. Adam Shippey, fantastic. Lucas is great. And then of course all the incumbents. Brian Lenny, he's amazing. Scott Herning just announced for re-election. Brett Skidmore over in Idaho Falls. Dude needs to shave. Absolutely needs to shave. But he looks like a good candidate. Carrie Hanks, she's coming back. She's going to try to come back. I don't know if she's announced for which seat she's going for, but I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to get Carrie on. We've got a really good army of candidates, and they are headed straight into battle. So when I tell you, open your freaking wallets for these people, do it. Please, I'm begging you. There are some of them that are really good at fundraising. Adam Shippey is killing it on fundraising because he needs to. He has to, right? But others are struggling because there's not a lot of money. You wouldn't think it, but there's not a lot of money for libertarian or not libertarian, but liberty-oriented candidates here. Because guess what? Liberty-oriented candidates like Lucas and Adam and Rob, they aren't here to cut deals for their crony friends who then cut checks to the campaign or to PACs. So please open your wallets and support people like Lucas, support people like Rob, Adam, Carrie, Brian. Do it. Even $25. That's 5 yard signs, 6 yard signs. That could be a mailing that then they turn into $500. If you can't do that, donate to a PAC. If you don't want to donate to a candidate, PACs are really good. Some PACs are really good about making your dollar stretch. If you can't do that, I know the economy's tough. Eggs are like $40. Gas is like $3,000 a gallon, I think. And I just bought a Ford F-150. What an idiot. Whatever. Gas is expensive. Volunteer. Make phone calls. Have the candidate in your home. Invite your friends over. Do anything possible because the next election is really important. The conservatives have the establishment on the ropes, without a doubt. The conservatives flipped 11 seats in the Idaho Senate last year. 11 seats. That's unheard of. It's almost a third of the Senate went conservative last year. This next year, and I'm not going to be shy about this, conservatives have the chance to deliver a knockout punch. And then in 2026, we bury them. But we've got to fight. And it starts with donations to people like Lucas and Rob and Adam. Okay, two things as we close out our show. I am going to play for you this lame ad that this unknown group lobbed at some of our favorite lawmakers this afternoon. The text, I'm gonna read the text. I didn't get one, but I got it from a bunch of people, and I probably am gonna file an FEC complaint because when I send out text in my pack, I have to follow certain rules. I have to say who it's from, like literally a body. It can't be just Joe Schmo down it has to be a person. You have to say which group is paying for this. They didn't. And if it happens, if the complaint goes through, it's like $1,500 a message. Knowing that these messages go out to hundreds and thousands of people. Whoops. Big whoops. But let me read this message for you. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can do this in a scary voice. What does Senator Brian Lenny stand for? Not Idaho. Check out this video. I'll play that for you in just a second. He pledged an oath to an out-of-state dark money group. Idahoans believe in transparency, accountability, and local control, not faceless hidden agendas from outsiders. Call or email Lenny today and tell him his oath is to the Constitution and the citizens of Idaho, not East Coast and California dark money groups. That's the best you could do? You spent probably, if I have my math right, you probably spent $10,000 on text messages today. You spent a couple thousand on a video. Actually, they probably spent like $40 on a video. I'm actually going to show this to you because it's really bad. Here we go. Try not to laugh when you see this. Here we go.
Legislators swear an oath to support the Constitution, but that's not good enough for Citizens Alliance of Idaho. They want our leaders to pledge allegiance to them. Funded by California CEOs and East Coast billionaires, this dark money, special interest group wants to control our elected leaders. Ask your legislators to say no to phony pledges and out-of-state dark money. Call your legislator today and remind them who they work for. Idahoans, not special interest groups.
Okay. That was terrible. There are so many problems with that, but let's go point by point real quick. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know it's late. Some of you have bedtimes. I took a nap before this, so I'm a little charged up. First of all, CAI is a good group. CAI is absolutely a good group. And it's ironic to me that in the message they said, the text message this group sent, they said it was a shadowy group or something to that effect. We have no idea who sent these text messages. No idea. And yet CAI is the shadowy group? Who paid for these text messages? Now, I work for an organization that, supports donor privacy. That's fine. Maybe some donors wanted this and it's through a C4. That's fine. Still don't know who the C4 is that sent these. If it was a C4, maybe it was a PAC. I don't know. I play by one set of rules. And it's funny to me that we're using California CEOs and East Coast billionaires to scare people when the establishment, who is likely behind this in some way, shape, or form, they get their money from Pfizer and Moderna and all the billion, trillion-dollar companies, whatever they are. That's who you want to demonize is left-wing, East Coast CEOs and California billionaires. I don't even remember. It was so bad. And by the way, guys, look, I've been producing ads for the last 5 years. Your voiceover sucks. You can go on Fiverr. I'm not even going to charge you for this one. Not even going to charge you. Go on Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com, and get your voiceover done legitimately. It's piss poor. The production quality is garbage. Your views suck. They probably sent this out to 10,000 voters today. They have 120 views as of this moment. So obviously your message isn't hitting. You suck at messaging. It's terrible. And CAI doesn't ask for loyalty to CAI. if you read any of the points, which they actually, it was nice of them to include them, go read Citizens Alliance's pledge. It actually says, because lawmakers weren't following their oaths to the Constitution, it reaffirms constitutional principles. Low taxes, freedom, liberty, less spending, no new programs. That's what it is. There's no obedience. It's funny because Matt Edwards is a friend of mine, has done a great job building the CAI brand. And they've got this cute little tiger on there, and he's holding up their kudos or whatever. How in the world, and I know you can be tricked by branding all the time, but like, you're going to attack the guy who's saying, hey, promise us you'll follow the Constitution or we're going to call you out. Like, that's bad. That's bad. That's what we're doing. 2024 is going to get ugly. And that's to my earlier point with Lucas and the others. It's going to get bad. And it's already started, right? Idaho Freedom Action, we've played a couple of their ads that they've done their legislative education efforts, calling out Schroeder and Lee. Good. This one is phony. It's dishonest. Probably breaks FCC regulations. So hope you have deep pockets. I honestly think I know who's behind it, and I'll let you know next week if my hunch is right. I'm gonna figure it out because I have an idea. Your favorite lawmakers, if you're a conservative, conservatarian, or libertarian type, your favorite lawmakers are about to see a barrage of attacks like they have never seen before. They're coming. The establishment is coming, especially for the senators, because there are so few of them, and that body controls so much. The appointments, the money, the power, the policy. Lobbyists were pissed when Idaho Freedom PAC, they all blend together. When Idaho Freedom PAC took all of their 11 of their players off the board, their establishment shills, their crony votes, took them off the board. I told you about this. We got a letter, or we intercepted a message from a lobbyist who said, oh, Woodward, I think it's Woodward, Crabtree, and Patrick, there are reliable transportation votes. Easy stuff. It was always easy to get their votes. What are we going to do now? I don't care what you're going to do now. But there's going to be hell to pay. And Brian Lenny and Tammy Nichols and Scott Hearn and Cindy Carlson, Chris Treacle, they are facing something. Think about this. And this goes back to my earlier point, again, of opening your wallets. Last election, groups and candidates spent a total of like $250,000 to unseat Chad Christensen and like $210,000 or $230,000 to unseat Ron Nate. Man, it's going to get bad. And by the way, Ron only lost by 34 votes or something like that. They had to smear him to the tune of $230,000, and he lost by 34 votes. Conservative principles are strong and they win, but they can only withstand so much smearing. I hope you're ready for 2024, Idaho, because it's gonna get really bad. I'm ready. I'm ready to throw some punches. The other thing I'm really excited about next week's show. Tonight was good. Lucas was a good candidate. Really good discussion. Next week, Phil Izon, I think I'm pronouncing that right. He is the director of the Ranked Choice Education Association. We've been communicating back and forth on Twitter because Idaho is now probably going to have ranked choice voting on the ballot, thanks to Governor Butch Otter, who signed on to the petition for ranked choice voting. Why? I put out a satirical graphic earlier this week that Butch had entered the transfer portal. It was joyful, but now all three initiatives that Reclaim Idaho has proposed, a Republican official, high-ranking Republican official, governor, has signed on. 3 times ago, it was Medicaid expansion, and that was Butch. He endorsed it. 2 times ago, Brad Little took the socialist money dump that Reclaim was proposing, stripped out the tax increase, which, okay, that's cool, great, and then spent the money anyway. And this time, Governor Otter is all for open primaries and ranked choice voting. And the establishment wonders why we don't want them to govern anymore, as if it's some big secret. I digress again. But next week, Ranked Choice Education Association has done the research. We've been going back and forth on Twitter. He's got some really interesting things to say about it, including the fact that administration offices or the election offices that administer elections don't administer these votes correctly. There have been errors all across the board. At a time when the confidence in our election system is at an all-time low, we're going to make it more complicated. So we're going to talk about that next week. I hope you'll join us. In the coming weeks, we're going to have Phil. We're going to have Carrie Hanks on after she announces her intention to run. We're going to get Scott Herndon back. He talked guns with us earlier, but now we're going to talk about his re-election campaign. Brett Skidmore is going to come on. The next few weeks are going to be amazing, guys. I hope this podcast has value for you. And if you ever want us to bring somebody on to talk about a policy issue or priority, please just drop a comment and let me know, because I'd love to do it. I'm not doing this just so I can hear myself talk. I actually hate my own voice. I'm doing this because I want you to get some value. I want you to get some value from this. I'm sorry, just reading the comments. I don't know what's going on. There's something about the church or something. Anyway, I hope you're getting some value from this, because I think people pay too much attention to Washington and not enough to Idaho. And that's the goal of this, is to bring the focus to where change can happen. You're not going to change Idaho, or excuse me, you're not going to change America. Nothing you can do, almost nothing you can do, is going to change the trajectory of Washington, D.C. It's irreparably broken. It's like John Fetterman and his clothing styles. It's not going to change, and it's a dumpster fire. Let's change Idaho together and make sure that we are a bastion of liberty, that we say no to the feds, that we say no to the woke trans pride of religion. And let's preserve this as the last place where liberty exists on the face of this earth. Thanks, Tunnel Lord. I've got mic problems. I'm working on them. I don't know what's going on. If you want to send me a new mic, please feel free. I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, Lucas, thanks for coming on the show. Next week, Ranked Choice Education Association, Phil Izon will be with us. We're going to play our amazing stinger, and then we are going to get out of here. Have a great night, everybody.